In 1840, a Venetian mirror maker attempted to leave the island of Murano. His name was Giacomo Serena. He had spent 30 years learning to make mirrors, using a method that the Republic of Venice had classified as a state secret, a method so valuable that the Venetian government had confined its practitioners to an island in the lagoon, not as slaves, but as assets too important to be free. The mirror makers of Murano lived in gilded captivity, comfortable, honored, never permitted to leave. Serena left anyway. Venetian agents found him in a village north of the city before he reached the border. What happened to him is not in any accessible record. What happened to his knowledge, the specific technique, the precise measurements, the practiced gestures of 30 years, that is also not in any record. Because whatever Serena carried in his hands died with him. And 5 years later, in 1845, the first factory producing mirrors, using an entirely different chemistry, opened in Germany. Within a generation, the mirror that humanity had used for 400 years was virtually extinct, and nobody noticed what had been taken. To understand what was lost, you need to understand what Venetian mirrors were. Not just what they looked like, what they did. The Republic of Venice classified mirror making as a state secret for over 200 years. Not glass making, mirrors specifically. Venice produced glass of every kind. Ships, textiles, spices, all of it valuable. None of it protected with the same lethal intensity, reserved for mirrors. The mirror makers were confined to Murano under threat of assassination if they attempted to share their knowledge. Venetian agents operated across Europe. Their specific brief was to locate any glassmaker attempting to produce Venetian-quality mirrors outside of Venetian control. Several were killed, several disappeared. The Republic of Venice, a civilization built on trade and diplomacy, was willing to murder to protect the secret of how mirrors were made. The question I couldn't let go of was simply, why? Why would a state treat a mirror the way modern governments treat nuclear technology? The official answer is economics. Venetian mirrors were expensive. Protecting the monopoly protected the profit. That answer is true, but it's not complete, because the mirrors were worth protecting, not only as commodities, but as objects. The technique was called the tin-mercury amalgam. A sheet of tin foil was laid flat, liquid mercury was poured over it. The mercury bonded with the tin to create a reflective surface, an amalgam that took weeks, sometimes months, to fully cure. The glass was slid carefully onto this surface, weighted, left to rest, tended by craftsmen who understood, through decades of practice, exactly how the process worked, and exactly what it was meant to produce. The result was a mirror that reflected light in a way no modern mirror does. Modern mirrors work simply. A thin coating of aluminum, sometimes silver, is deposited on the back of glass in a vacuum chamber. The layer is microscopically thin, perfectly uniform. It bounces photons back at precisely the angle they arrived. The reflection is sharp, bright, flat. It shows you what a camera shows you. A surface, an exterior. Every pore, every line, every asymmetry rendered with clinical precision. The tin-mercury amalgam was different. The reflective layer was thicker, not perfectly uniform. It had a molecular structure that interacted with light in a more complex way, absorbing certain wavelengths, softening others, creating a reflection that was less a perfect optical bounce and more a conversation between the light and the metal. The result was warmth, human skin rendered with a luminosity that modern mirrors strip away, shadows with gradation and subtlety that photographers spend thousands of dollars trying to recreate with lighting equipment and post-processing. The old mirrors didn't show you less, they showed you differently. And here is where the story stops being about glass and starts being about something else. The reflection in a tin mercury mirror was closer to how another person actually sees your face than the reflection in a modern mirror is. The human eye looking at another person doesn't see with the clinical precision of an aluminium-coated surface. It sees with warmth, It fills in context. It perceives the face through decades of familiarity and love. The old mirror approximated that. The modern mirror does not. The modern mirror shows you what a machine sees when it looks at you. And the face a machine sees is not the face your mother sees when she looks across a room at you. It is not the face that the people who love you encounter. It is a harsher version, a more troubled version, a version that needs, as it happens, a great deal of improvement. In 1835, a German chemist named Justus von Liebig developed a process for depositing a thin layer of metallic silver onto glass, using a simple chemical reaction. The process was faster, cheaper. It didn't require months of curing. It didn't require the extraordinary skill of a Murano-trained craftsman. And it didn't involve mercury, which was and is toxic. Mirror makers using the old technique suffered from mercury poisoning, tremors, cognitive decline, organ damage. The phrase "mad as a hatter" comes from the mercury used in hat making. Mirror makers suffered the same fate. The silver process was safer. The silver process was better. The silver process was progress. That is the official explanation, and every word of it is true. But here is what the official explanation uses the health argument to obscure. The real reason the transition happened was not health. It was scale. The tin mercury process was artisanal. It required skilled craftsmen, working slowly with expensive materials. It could not be industrialized. It could not be scaled. It could not produce mirrors at the volume and the price point that a rapidly urbanizing industrial society demanded. The silver process could. Within decades of Liebig's process being commercialized, the tin mercury mirror was effectively extinct. Not because it was worse, because it was incompatible with the economic system that was replacing the world it came from. The timing is important. 1835, Liebig's silver process. 1840, Giacomo Serena disappears, attempting to carry the old knowledge out of Murano. 1850s, industrial mirror production begins replacing artisanal production across Europe. 1860s, the first generation of humans who will never see themselves in a tin mercury mirror is being born. These decades are the same decades when Tartaria disappears from maps, when the world's fair structures are being built to display what is about to be demolished, when the old world infrastructure is being catalogued and replaced. The mirror transition is one piece of a much larger transition, the replacement of a civilization's way of seeing itself with a way that serves the market better than it serves the person. Now I want to tell you about what the Venetians actually knew and why I think they were protecting something bigger than a trade secret. For 400 years, the most skilled craftsmen in Europe refined the tin mercury technique to a degree of perfection that took generations to achieve. The Venetians had, by the 1600s, produced mirrors so extraordinary that Louis XIV of France paid a sum equivalent to millions of modern dollars to smuggle the knowledge out of Murano. French agents bribed Venetian mirror makers to come to Paris. Several came. Several were subsequently found dead. Venetian intelligence had followed them. The survivors eventually shared enough of the technique to allow France to break the monopoly. But what strikes me is not the political intrigue, it's the purpose. The French king did not want better mirrors for manufacturing. He wanted better mirrors for the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, a space specifically designed to show powerful people their own reflection at the highest possible quality. The most powerful person in France understood that the quality of a mirror was not a trivial aesthetic matter. He understood that how power sees itself is itself a form of power. And this is where the Venetian secret becomes something stranger. The Republic of Venice knew something about mirrors that they chose never to write down. The entire body of knowledge was transmitted person to person, master to apprentice, hand to hand, gesture to gesture. Not because they feared the knowledge being stolen. They feared that anyway, and it was stolen anyway. But because the knowledge existed in a form that could not be written. It existed in the specific way a craftsman's hands moved when they poured mercury over tin. It existed in the judgment, built through years of watching how the amalgam cured and learning to read what it was becoming. It existed in the understanding of what a good reflection felt like, to stand in front of a quality so subtle, so dependent on the human nervous system's response to a specific quality of light, that it could not be reduced to a specification or a formula. When the last Murano craftsman died, without passing their knowledge, or were prevented from passing it, by Venetian agents or by the economic forces that made their skill unmarketable, the knowledge did not transfer to the industrial process. It couldn't. It existed in a form that factories don't speak. Stand in front of a modern mirror. The reflection you see was designed by an industrial chemist in 1835, optimized for manufacturing efficiency. It was not designed for you. It was not designed to show you what the people who love you see. It was not designed to render your face the way candlelight does, or the way the eye of someone who has known you for years softens and contextualizes what it perceives. It was designed to be cheap and fast and scalable. And now it is in every bathroom in the industrialized world, and the face it shows, the slightly harsh, slightly over-precise, every flaw visible face, has generated an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars, selling you solutions to a problem the mirror itself created. I don't think that's an accident. I think it's a pattern. The pattern is this: a craft knowledge refined over centuries to serve human beings well is replaced by an industrial process that serves the market better. The replacement is presented as progress, and in narrow technical terms it is. Mercury is toxic. The new process is safer. The new process is faster. The new process is cheaper. All true. But the thing that was refined, the specific quality of the old reflection, the warmth, the depth, the human-centered seeing that doesn't transfer, that disappears. And what disappears with it is not just a technique, it is a particular relationship between a person and their own face, a relationship that did not require $400 of moisturizer and $50 of foundation, and the accumulated anxiety of a culture that has been looking at itself through a machine's eyes for 150 years. Find an old mirror, not a reproduction, not a department store antique. Something genuinely old, something made before 1850 if you can. Stand in front of it. The reflection you will see will be different from the one you are used to. The difference is hard to describe, but easy to feel. You will look warmer, softer, more like what you actually are, rather than what a machine records you as being. That reflection is not less accurate. It is accurate in a different direction, toward the human experience of a face, rather than toward the optical physics of photon reflection. The Venetians killed to protect this. Not the glass, not the chemistry, the reflection. They understood, in a way that we have lost, that how a civilization sees itself is not a trivial matter, that the image in the mirror shapes the mind that looks into it, that the quality of the reflection is not an aesthetic preference, but a fundamental fact about how a person moves through the world. And when the knowledge died in the hands of craftsmen who were confined and hunted and replaced, what died with it was not just a mirror, it was a way of seeing yourself as something worth looking at.